First of all, the movie is very dramatic, but also very funny. What's the most important thing to take care of to don't cross the borderline in terms of the comedy elements?
Well, you're the person that has to feel it as a director, and you hope that you're right. All I knew that it was I wanted to have an authentic experience personally. I needed to go through Greg's journey, and I like the balance of the sadness and the comedy and how very lifelike it is to have those emotional currents all the time. Obviously the script has it already. It had a wonderful blend of the two, and then in realizing it and shooting it, and through the performance, through the naturalism of the performance, you hope that you're achieving something that feels authentic, real. And then you start calibrating it in post-production. Sound design is so important, and how long you stay on a close-up might make an audience suggest it's a love story, so, and it isn't, in a traditional sense. So there's a lot of that rhythm to make sure that the relationship was clear, that it was a deep connection that was not going to be sexual. And then the balancing the back and forth, sometimes it's embracing the silence and the stillness, even to the point that it's uncomfortable, to make it feel more authentic, as opposed to adding a piece of music that might force you to feel. I wanted the audience to feel if they wanted to feel, and choose not to if they didn't identify with the journey. And that was all. You're the person that has to gauge what is moving to you and what feels right to you, and then you let it off in the world, and you hope that people share your experience.
I'm sure that many people are going to watch the movie who are dealing with cancer or deal with it before. How important was it to you to not only represent the tragedy of their illness, but also delivering them a glimpse of hope?
Well, I think it was very important, because the film is about living. It's about life. It embraces life through humor and comedy. It embraces adolescence. It embraces cinema, obviously. But there was a lot of research that I did, and Olivia as well, to make sure that the details of the journey of the kind of cancer that Rachel has was correct, was honest, and that informed a lot of that research informed certain scenes, like the pink wig and the hats, and the way girls and their association, their connection to their hair is much more intense than boys, for instance, and so the losing of the hair is quite tragic on another level with young ladies, and the idea of getting control of that by shaving your head before you take it before it takes you, and the life and the fashion and her clothes become more vibrant, and the patterns become more alive as the movie goes on, and what was important is also the hope is always there, life is always there, it's always present throughout the movie. She is everywhere. She's the color yellow that informs every color palette of the entire film. Earl's house, Greg's green room and jacket, the yellow in the film, her pillows, the rubber bands in his wrist. She's everywhere already. So there was a continuum that was already being suggested of her as already a very vivid presence throughout. And also the fact that you never wanted to play her as a victim. That was very important to us. So life is always there, and it's quite bubbling in the almost to the surface in every scene, even in the harder ones. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's always something, even in the hospital scene, the way the flare reacts to the lens and the colors of the screen are bouncing the reds, and there's something bigger around that hopefully is optimistic.
And Greg is having the moment near the end where he's looking for the ultimate inspiration to make the perfect movie for Rachel. Where did you take your inspiration from to make Me and Earl and the Dying Girl the perfect movie for you?
I found I don't know. I always look at films. I love movies. I've been obsessed with movies for such a long time, and I knew I had very little days to shoot. And I looked at Hal Ashby and Harold and Maude, and I looked at the Graduate. I went back in 400 Blows. The simplicity of that approach, because I knew I had very little time, but also I didn't want to fall into a very conventional, traditional Hollywood kind of filmmaking either, because I wanted it to be new to me, and so a lot of it is you hope you want to experiment and try new different things in how you shoot a scene, but I certainly always look to the masters. because I wanted the film to have a kind of a timeless feel and not traditional editing pattern or traditional score or traditional sound, And so you always look to the past for inspiration. All those great filmmakers are already part of your DNA, and sometimes they help you and they guide you, and sometimes you're left to your own devices. But it was just a personal need to tell the story that really inspired me to try to get the job.
And then when someone gets ill, time becomes the meaning of time changes completely.
Yes.
What does time mean to you?
That's a big question. I don't know. I'm trying to understand it. In this movie, you have a girl who is faced with a very compressed life all of a sudden. And she deals with it with great dignity and to live it intensely. I mean, as you get older and you start experiencing death, you start looking at time differently, and it's so hard to answer that question without sounding like a cliche. But it is about living it intensely, without regret, and I'm working on that. But I know that for instance, my father, who the film is dedicated to, is no longer around, and I had a very tough time understanding that idea. And the film is dedicated to him because I was trying to make sense of that journey, and I was hoping for some kind of continuum, not in a traditional sense, because I'm really not a man of faith, but it was more that time. So he's no longer physically here, so there's the physical side of it. But by making this movie, I talk about him, I keep him alive, people inquire about him, just like we're honoring Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, who are no longer physically here, but their films are. So I think time, there is a continuum of some way that, their shape is no longer defined, but they're very much present as a vivid memory. So there is. I guess I'm having faith in some kind of continuum that I didn't have before, and maybe that's a way to answer your question. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.